Thanks, Daniel. Quick show of hands before I start. Anyone contributed here to Kamailio in any way? Code, bug fixes, documentation, mailing list answers? Quite a few of you, yeah. In short, I mean, you guys are the reason that it's possible to make this talk. The community, which we'll talk about later. But just for context, Simwood is a carrier, a UK wholesale carrier, 30 years this year. Prior to that, I started a company called Sipcentric in 2010, acquired by Simwood in 2019. I became CTO at that point, and I had Kamailio Dev Access since 2013. Simwood's sponsored KamailioWorld since edition 1, I believe, every year, since every in-person edition. And this talk is, in a sense, the sort of combination of all of those things, and where we are today and how we got there. So, the version of Kamailio that we run today, so that we deployed in 2005, would still recognize the version of Kamailio that runs today. Almost nothing else in our stack could say the same thing. That's the talk in 2 sentences. I'm going to attempt to unpack that for you now. The talk has 2 halves. The first part is retrospective. So a quick tour of the last 20 years of stack churn at Simwood. The second part is forward-looking. And we're going to look specifically at 2 of the most exciting things that we're working on right now, and why they are each a Kamailio story. So, 20 years, or for the more astute of you, 21. We're going to walk you through very quickly, roughly 30 seconds per era, of how our stack has changed in that time, from the very beginning. And as I do, watch for the pattern, because you'll start to see what changed, what didn't, what changed, what stayed. Very condensed, but 20-year timeline there. What you'll see is the horizontal lines being the components, the layers of the stack. Every one of them has changed, sometimes multiple times through the years. But the top one there, the one at the top, hasn't. It's remained consistent from day one. It's grown in terms of its responsibilities, in terms of its role in the stack, but it's been there throughout. So we start 2005. Actually started with Asterisk, AGI for the routing, and MySQL for the data for persistence and config, on bare metal. So pretty much the starting point. I think if you were doing voice back in 2005, that's kind of what it would look like. The point is that Kamailio is not behind the soft switch there. It's at the front, customer facing still, but just purely load balancing between Asterisk instances at that point. And you'll see at the bottom, tiny line there. Kamailio is still here. Well, that's the starting point, but you'll see that throughout. In 2008, we replaced Asterisk with FreeSwitch at the core. It was the routing logic moved to mod XML curl with PHP-backed core routing engine that still exists today, just in a different form, different language, far more performant. But Kamailio's role there didn't change. Okay, it was still load balancing. What was behind it changed. What it didn't. Okay, it was still there, as you can see at the bottom. Early 2010s, I think that's what you call it. That's where the stack starts to look like a modern one. We changed, we stepped up from bare metal to VMs. VM virtualization was a good thing then, real thing. Allowed us to deploy images rapidly, and scale, we thought, brilliant, we've cracked it. We struggled with MySQL at that point with the data, so we needed something a bit quicker to sort of cache the lookups and things like that, the data that we needed for lookups. So we implemented Redis there in about 2012. At the same time, Kamailio stepped up. Okay, so it started to take on things like filtering, security. We ran SIP capture on a spam port for fraud analysis. We sort of fed some of the signals into Redis and then used that elsewhere in the stack. It was essentially the start of the proper edge. So that's the moment, I think, that Kamailio stopped being just the plumbing and started becoming the true customer-facing surface. But then we move on to 2014. Registration. Prior to this, we were registering in the core, so asterisk, then by FreeSwitch, because it wasn't really a big thing. For us, mostly was direct IP, IP auth, and then sort of set inbound calls to carry the customers was direct to IP. But registration was a thing, and in that year we launched Simwood Mobile. That relied on registration in both directions, so handling incoming registers, but also initiating outgoing registers. So we deployed Red Proxy, as we called it, and that sat at the edge, powered by Kamailio, as is a common theme you'll see start to surface. You'll see mention there of AI and UAC story. Just hold that thought, because we'll come back to that in part 2. 2016, 17, getting more recent now, and the containerization was the order of the moment, the thing that replaced virtualization, VMs, and we, at the same time, extracted media from the core and pushed it close to the edge with RTP Engine. Sat next to Kamailio, it handled encryption, transcoding, forking, and all of them became first-class capabilities at the edge rather than the core, allowing us to really scale and go global with the edge while maintaining quite a dense, performant core for the business logic. That pairing, Kamailio and RTP Engine, structurally important, and we'll return to that also in a few minutes. And that brings us roughly to today. The registration, filtering, transport mediation, RTP Engine orchestration, all sits at the edge, close to the customer where it needs to be. Latency is obviously important where any real-time media is concerned. Core routing logic, that sits at the core, with FreeSwitch still backed by our core routing app, now in Node, with Redis, performing something like 200 to 300 real-time checks for every call setup around fraud, margin, profit, protection, that sort of thing. But two concerns, two places. The edge handles the SIP and the media. The core decides what each call should do. Now, the interesting thing about that split, before I move on, is it's been remarkably stable. Everything inside has changed at least once. Or each box, the shape has changed. But Kamailio has sat in front of it all the time, as I'm sure I think all of you guys can agree. That slide speaks for itself. If we look back to that diagram, the initial diagram, Kamailio has been solid, strong, consistent throughout. And the thing about a piece of infrastructure that's been in place for 25 years, unchanged, is you kind of forget about it, yeah, until you try to imagine the stack without it. So why is it the constant? Obvious one. I'm going to give you 4 reasons, but the first and obvious one is performance. Kamailio handles real carrier traffic, always has done, does it well. I don't believe there's an open source equivalent that can match its performance. You know, genuinely, it's why we've used it for so long, and why it's so key in everything we do now. Operators know its worth, and it's why it's continues use today in key deployments around the world. Number 2, the modular ecosystem. It's kind of the Swiss Army knife of the SIP world. Anything that you want to do with it, you can do. Any SIP problem worth solving over the 25 years has been solved already with 25 years of battle-tested modules. The key line here is the boring stuff has already been solved. Okay, and that's praise. It's a compliment, because boring infrastructure is what you want, right? You want the infrastructure to just be boring and do what it needs to do. So you can build the fun things on top, the exciting things on top. Reason 3, that pairing I spoke about earlier, Kamailio with RTP engine at the edge, allows us to keep latency-sensitive media handling and orchestration around it at the edge, close to the customer where it belongs. And it's not just architectural preference. It's load-bearing, really, for everything that we're going to speak about in part 2, the forward-looking section. And part 4, perhaps the most important, non-technical, but the community. Okay. Oh, it's on this back. Okay. So credit really is due. Credit where credit's due to the community. It is not just to developers; it's to everyone who has shipped a release. Fixed a bug, written a module, answered somebody on the mailing list for the same question that may be asked 50 times, with a smile, happily, because it's what makes the project tick, right? So, yeah, I guess this slide is just saying a quick thank you, from an operator who's been at Simwood and myself personally, as somebody who's contributed back, as Daniel said, actively in the past, perhaps more management nowadays, but just time commitments. But still some fixes here and there along the way. The reason Kamailio is still here is not just technical, it's because people continue to show up. So that concludes part 1. We're doing well on time. I'm trying not to go too quickly, but there's a lot to cover, so I'll leave time for questions at the end. Part 2 is kind of forward-looking, as I said. It's the catalyst. In fact, the most important things, the most interesting things and exciting things that we're developing today didn't exist as product categories 2 years ago. Yeah, Kamailio enables every one of them in one way or another. Number 1, example, conversational AI. I think everyone's doing that in some shape or form. We've had some talks about it today, some really fascinating stuff actually. We'll take some learning back from that. But we deployed our first agentic AI back in April last year, April 2025, and we thought it was great, and it worked brilliantly as an AI component. It worked brilliantly, but our customers didn't use it, and why was that? Because they couldn't integrate it. Okay, we enabled SIP headers to be able to route call back to us to an agent and tell us which agent we wanted it to go to, and then we had some webhooks to channel events and things back to them. But they didn't use it because they had their own platforms, they had their own PBXs. They didn't want to re-engineer it. They didn't want to do all the work to integrate with that. So they wanted to drop it into their existing platforms, simple as. And the PBX shouldn't need to know it's talking to an AI. It should just see it as a regular extension, just as a human connecting via a soft phone or a SIP device. So that's what we did. We developed a reverse registration UAC with the UAC module, UAC reg, which registers outwards to any remote PBX. The customer just gives us some credentials for an extension on their PBX. It registers. And the novelty is what's behind that registration, not the registration itself. But that just really helps them to start to deploy these agents to their customers as if they were just, and then all that's left is a bit of API work to define and configure the agent, the prompt and everything else. So it's there, registers, off it goes. We're using this ourselves. So meet Jay. Jay is one of our agents, as you can see. It appears in our list of extensions on the Simwood PBX. Answers questions from prospects, questions from customers. And the PBX just sees it as a regular extension on it. So let's do a slight demo, 45 seconds.
Welcome to the world of Simwood. My name is Jay. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm Benita, calling from ADC Telecom. I'm looking to speak to Charles Chance.
Okay, you're Benita from ADC Telecom, and you'd like to speak to Charles Chance. Can you briefly tell me the reason for your call?
We met at ITW and we spoke about how you guys use Kamailio in your stack and was interested in learning more about it.
Thanks, Benita. Please hold while I try to connect you.
Hello, Charles speaking.
Hi, this is the AI assistant handling your calls. I have Benita from ADC Telecom on the line. She met you at ITW and is interested in learning more about how Simwood uses Kamailio in its stack. Would you like to connect to the caller?
Oh, yes, please. Put us straight through. Benita, how are you?
Hi, Charles. I'm good. How are you?
I'll stop it there, but it demonstrates it's an intended transfer, right? But it's an intended transfer from an agent that can be integrated with any of our customers' stacks just with a set of SIP credentials, because it then appears to the PBX as anyone else does. So, yeah, quite a simple solution to what is a crucial problem, really, for customer uptake or engagement on that product. So why is it a Kamailio story? Registration, NAT traversal, transport mediation, all of the above, bending SIP at the edge without modifying endpoints on either side. That's kind of exactly what Kamailio was built for. Nothing in it required new modules. This was purely composition. So we took what was there, existing capabilities, assembled it in a way that made sense to solve the problem. A problem that didn't exist when those modules were actually written, as I said before. And that itself is quite a quiet credit to the project. The newest thing in our stack speaks the oldest protocol, and that's exactly why it works. The hardest part of this project, of this product, was everything except the SIP. Example 2. This one is in development as we speak, due for beta launch in Q3 this year. It will be useful, won't be polished, obviously, as any beta you would expect. But it's a set of carrier layer services to observe, transcribe, label voice calls in real time, and then surface structured highlights and data and insights to operators and to their customers. Available in 3 tiers, completely managed API for self-service, and then pure sort of SIP tap, media tap, for example, SIPREC. Now, Kamailio, as you discovered in our stack, doesn't own the call metadata. The core does, but Kamailio owns the RTP engine session and orchestration, which is where the media tap happens, where the media is subscribed to at the edge, one or multiple times. So we push this information into Redis. That's not everything we push, but it's just a bare bones example, which enables then the tap service to be able to discover where calls are in real time and tap into the call on demand. It also it allows tenant isolation, security obviously. So when when a customer presents their API key to tap into a specific call, we know it belongs to them. And then enrichment later on when the events are triggered or fired. It just allows us to sort of enrich it with things like the trunk involved, check configuration for that trunk to know what to do with them, and et cetera, et cetera. So the project, the real-time call analytics project, as I say, is still in development. The momentum of that is very fast-paced. It's moving swiftly, largely enabled by the recent additions to RTP Engine with subscribe, unsubscribe on the NG protocol, and Kamailio's exposure of that. SIPREC is still in discussion internally as to where we handle it. Kamailio is a very real possibility directly versus the tap service, but we're still, they're both viable. Still actively reshaping what's possible 25 years in. We're not adding AI to Kamailio, okay? Kamailio is giving AI access to the call, essentially. Okay, same picture you saw before, just with a slight addition, and we go sort of just beyond now. Those two things I just spoke about are kind of at the front. They plug into the edge. They plug into the edge, and the edge enables it in a performant way, one where we can get closer to the customer wherever they are in the world, that we're across the global platform. This doesn't happen at the core. There are other things, WhatsApp Business, Teams, Operator Connect, all of those things, they've all been enabled in recent years by this structure and by Kamailio. And as we near the end, the thesis, the sort of the thing that all this is based around. For 25 years, Kamailio has been the right answer to a surprisingly stable question, which you see there. And I don't believe the next 25 years of products or problems will change that question. Fundamentally, it's still very relevant. And that's the most exciting part. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the prize, Charles. You contributed to the project as well. Thank you for that as well. And yes, we know we're going to have some questions here. I start with James.
Yeah, hi, Charles. Thank you for that. I really love your little demo. I thought that was really sparky. I was hoping that, I'm hoping that you can do a proper dangerous demo tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
but we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
I was hoping that you were going to say something about what you've been doing with WhatsApp for Business, and in particular, how you've implemented WhatsApp to SIP. And I don't know whether you can say anything about the Meta 2000 rule as well.
Meta, or the WhatsApp Business API has SIP capability out of the box, so we opted to go that way, that route, rather than WebRTC, because it's kind of what we do at the core, and it's the core of our business. And we've got the edge locations wherever the call might ingress from. So it works really well. We use a lot of GeoDNS and some Anycast, particularly on AWS, where we've got some edge nodes around the world, to make sure that the call reaches us in the nearest places. But there's nothing special there really in terms of WhatsApp and how we're handling the SIP. It's just SIP at the end of the day. And Kamailio running at the edge enables us to be reachable.
Okay, just to add, because it was also on the community, actually, these past days I added some support, because WhatsApp supports also SHA for hashing, for authentication, so that's now on UAC module, very fresh. It works with MD5 as well. It gives the both options, but if someone is looking for the stronger hashing algorithm, it's now on the development version of Kamailio. Just as a note, and with CBREC, hopefully Tori will have a short presentation. You decided to do it? Okay. He did quite a lot of work to make it easier to do CBREC with Kamailio, and in the last session today, he's going to present the work he has done. And there is also some example in a README file.
I look forward to that one.
One last question, if any. If not, we'll have the lunch break soon. Thank you, Charles, and again, thanks,
Thank you.
Simon and Simwood.